Often on this channel, we talk about Sonic the Hedgehog lore as well as the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. A few weeks ago, Sega did the unthinkable and released the official Sonic World Story, which is a history of everything dating back to tens of thousands of years ago. And some of the burning questions that people have been answered, but also there are more questions for some people. When does Sonic 4 take place? Is Sonic Shuffle actually canon? When does Sonic Mania take place? Is classic Sonic and modern Sonic the same person? You'll actually find a lot of these answers in the video essays and reviews playlist on my channel, so make sure to go check it out. But in today's video, we've already gone over the entire timeline, so now we're gonna talk about what exactly is wrong with it right now. So I said 2 weeks ago, tomorrow I'm gonna make this video, and yeah, it's been more than 2 weeks. But nonetheless, we are here talking about it today. It's important to note that Sega themselves did say that this is the canon timeline's highlights. Stay tuned for more things to get added in the future, so this is still kind of like a work in progress. So we're just gonna be talking about what we have to work with today, and of course in the future this will get updated. So here are things that are currently, at least in my opinion, wrong with the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. The first thing, none of the Game Gear games are included on the Sonic timeline. So the Sega Game Gear was a direct competitor to the Nintendo Game Boy in the 90s, and you could play Sonic the Hedgehog games on the go. You know what the biggest problem with the Game Gear was? You needed a lot of AA batteries to power this thing, but there was a ton of Sonic the Hedgehog games that released on the system during its lifespan. You had games like Sonic the Hedgehog 1, you had Sonic the Hedgehog 2, you had Sonic Chaos, Sonic Drift, Sonic Triple Trouble, which is probably one of the better Game Gear games. You had standalone Tails spin-off games such as Tails Adventure, Sonic Labyrinth, and you have games like Sonic Blast, which a lot of people hate, but for some reason I kind of like this one. So it's not the biggest deal in the world that these games aren't included, but I feel like it's been said over the years that a lot of these are canon. So if you think about games like Sonic Triple Trouble, this could be a significant game because it introduces a full-blown character in Fang the Hunter, Fang the Sniper, or Knack the Weasel, whatever you want to call him these days. I also think about games like Tails Adventure because in this game, Tails sets out on his own journey. So is this game canon? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I guess the thing I'd like to know is whether or not this takes place before or after Tails meets Sonic. Here's the next thing wrong with the timeline. Most classic Sonic games are missing from the official Sonic timeline. So as far as the classic Sonic timeline goes, despite having a lot of games, we only have Sonic 1, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, Sonic and Knuckles, we have Sonic Mania, we have Sonic Mania Plus, and Sonic Superstars, and that's it. Funny enough, a lot of the issues that we have with the timeline kind of stem from this classic Sonic era. So some of the games that are missing from this era include Sonic 3D Blast. Okay, I guess that's kind of a good thing, actually. We're also missing Sonic Spinball. Okay, I guess it's kind of good that this game's missing, too. We're missing some heavy hitters like Sonic Art. I mean, this game doesn't really have anything too significant pop up in it, but there are a couple things that I'll mention later on. But you would like to know when exactly this takes place. Another game that's interesting to point out is not on the list is Sonic the Fighters as well, because this game introduces some characters such as Fang the Sniper. We also can't forget that this game has the appearance of Team Hooligans as well. So is Sonic Superstars considered to be Fang's first appearance in the entire Sonic franchise? I don't think that should be the case because Fang and Team Hooligan appear in Sonic Mania, which allegedly occurs before Sonic Superstars. So I feel like it should be clarified that either some of those Game Gear games or Sonic the Fighters come prior to Sonic Mania as well as Sonic Superstars, right? A lot of games are missing from this era, so it's like we can only really guess where they occur. As far as timeline highlights go, I think they should highlight like the debut of certain characters. The next issue is the Metal Sonic problem. So how many Metal Sonics exactly are there? If you played any of the classic Sonic games, you would know that it's not necessarily shocking that Dr. Eggman likes to make all these different variants of Metal Sonic. Ultimately, it's like there can only be one true Metal Sonic, right? So the official classic Sonic era ends with Sonic 4 Episode 1 and Sonic 4 Episode 2. And in this, it says Dr. Eggman has completely revived Metal Sonic. He makes the Death Egg rise above Little Planet and sets out to conquer the world. In Sonic 4, Metal Sonic is seen dead in Stardust Speedway after his defeat from Sonic, which would basically discount all of the other appearances that Metal Sonic had throughout the series, up to this point in terms of the canonical timeline. In Knuckles Chaotix, we fight Metal Sonic. In Sonic the Fighters, we also go up against Metal. We also go up against Metal in Sonic Triple Trouble. Let's not forget that we also go up against him in Sonic Mania, although this could just be the Phantom Ruby version. Metal's also in Sonic R, and Metal's also in Sonic Drift, so only one thing can be true. Either those games are just not canon, or all of those Metal Sonics are fake, and the one true Metal Sonic was just dead the entire time. Next issue on the list is the Classic Sonic Time Travel Dilemma. Ever since Classic Sonic was introduced, this Classic Sonic and Modern Sonic thing was something that was very confusing for a lot of fans. I mean, when Generations first came came out, it wasn't really that difficult to understand. But once Sonic Forces came out and they said that classic Sonic was from a different dimension, that is when the fans did not understand what was going on. The conventional thinking for a long time was split timeline theory, which is often explored in fiction and suggests that altering the past creates a branching timeline where actions in the past split reality, leading to a new timeline in a different future. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If you meet a past version of yourself, then you are running through the future and experiencing events that you haven't experienced yet. Would that not alter the timeline and create something new? Especially when it happens not only once in Sonic Generations, but twice in Sonic Forces. The thing is, though, this isn't actually true. So there is no split timeline, and classic Sonic and modern Sonic exist within one singular timeline. Although every time we talk about the classic Sonic timeline, I hear this misinformation a lot. Everyone's always saying, no, it was split. It's two timelines. Well, they're not entirely wrong. Lynn, on his podcast a couple of years ago, actually came out and said at one point in time, Sega did consider there to be two different timelines between modern Sonic and classic Sonic, but eventually that was retconned. I'm not sure how long that was true for, but back in 2022, Sega did hire a lore manager to make sure the universe was more meaningfully connected. So at some point in time, on a Tales Tube a couple of years ago, they made it official. There is no timeline split. Classic Sonic is just the younger version of Sonic. But that does not let Sega off the hook. Hey, can you move away from me, please? You're gonna need to explain to me how classic Sonic can go into the future, experience all the events that modern Sonic's gonna face, and then go back in time, and then what, he forgets it? And then what, he does it again in Sonic Forces, and then it just like the cycle repeats? This is just something that I never understood, and why are you still standing next to me? Much better. He's gone now. The next timeline issue is the Phantom Ruby. The Phantom Ruby is a weapon that takes control of people's visual and depth perception to feed them false information. It is an interdimensional gemstone of incredible power that was fought over by several parties across a pair of different time periods. In terms of the games that it appears in, it's in Sonic Forces and Sonic Mania. Talk about a total whiplash. So here's what doesn't really make sense to me. So the Phantom Ruby is first introduced in Sonic Mania when Sonic is younger. The first person to discover and use the Phantom Ruby is classic Dr. Eggman. So Eggman from the past. So you mean to tell me that the Phantom Ruby is in the past, and then in Sonic Forces, Dr. Eggman from the future discovers it and starts to use its power? Shouldn't he already know what the Phantom Ruby is? And then in Sonic Forces, in the future, when the Phantom Ruby is being used, all of these clones and copies and weird stuff is going on, and Sonic has no idea what it is. It's like, wait, don't you guys already know what the Phantom Ruby is because you guys discovered it in the past? And then after Sonic Forces, when classic Sonic, aka the younger version of Sonic, is sent back into the past, then in Sonic Mania Plus, the younger versions of the characters are once again chasing after the Phantom Ruby. So the fact that they don't know what it is in the future, if they were chasing after it in the past, just, you know, doesn't really make that much sense to me. The next thing on the timeline to point out is that Sonic Advance is missing. I think one of the most notable issues that people have been pointing out with the timeline is that Sonic Advance 1 doesn't appear. The first Advance game to appear in the timeline is Sonic Advance 2. Quick disclaimer, this isn't really a big deal, but ultimately it is a little bit confusing as to why it's not there. You have to wonder, like, is Sonic Advance 1 not canon, or is it just not important enough in the timeline to include? The story is very simple. It's like Sonic chases after Dr. Eggman. The final battle shows Super Sonic fighting Eggman on the moon, and by the way, the moon isn't cut in half, so you can safely say that this probably takes place before Sonic Adventure 2. Maybe it's not in the timeline because nothing really happens in the game, so they didn't feel it was important enough to include, but ultimately, I think you could safely put this game anytime before SA1 or after SA1, but before Sonic Adventure 2. The next issue I have with the timeline is the Blaze the Cat and Sonic 06 dilemma. Sonic 06, when it comes to the Sonic canon, is kind of an odd game because it's true that the game is canon and all the events happened, but also they went back and wiped the events from the game from ever happening at the same time. It also raises some questions for me, like you think about the inclusion of Mephiles in Sonic and Shadow Generations, because he remembers all the events of Sonic 06, despite the fact that the events in Sonic 06 directly led to his creation, which were wiped out. So he's kind of just like existing outside of the timeline of Sonic 06. He knows everything that happened, even though he was wiped. Listen, that's a different question for a different video. Instead of the other questions that we have, I'd like to hone in our focus on Blaze the Cat. So this was actually confirmed a couple of years ago, and I talked about this in a previous video, but it's been established that Sonic Rush comes before Sonic 06. Blaze the Cat appears in Sonic Rush, and she appears in Sonic 06, and she's confirmed to be the same exact Blaze. So that means Sonic and Blaze have confirmed to have met each other in Sonic Rush before Sonic 06. However, in this game, it looks like Blaze and Sonic don't even know each other or acknowledge each other's existence. As a matter of fact, Silver's mission in this game is to kill Sonic. Blaze seems completely okay with with that. Now, there's some ways that you can dance around this and explain it, but there's still a couple of questions that we have. For example, what the hell is Blaze the cat doing in the future when her home is said to be the Soul Dimension? It also seems like she presumably dies in Sonic 06. I mean, obviously the events were wiped out, but you still have to ask yourself, like, what exactly is going on here? To me, it always truly felt like growing up that Sonic 06's Blaze and Sonic Rush's Blaze are two different characters. Let's be so for real right now. Instead of talking about the timeline stuff, it's quite obvious that obviously two different sections of Sonic Team were probably working on both Sonic 06 and Sonic Rush at the same exact time. I don't think the timeline or continuity was something that they thought. I think the sole thing that we should focus on right now is that they say Blaze is from the Soul Dimension. In Sonic 06, she's stuck in the future fighting Iblis with Silver. So I'd like to know exactly what the thought process was behind this. Perhaps it's been explained in the comics where Blaze says that the Soul Emeralds guide her to where trouble is, but at the end of the day, who knows? I don't think any of this was their original intention when they created the characters, but obviously now that there's a greater focus on narrative, they had to make some adjustments. The next issue with the timeline is, when do the Storybook games take place? So the two Storybook games, Sonic and the Secret Rings, and also Sonic and the Black Knight, two games that were developed for the Wii back in 2006 and 2009 that made heavy use of the motion controls. The Storybook series is quite literally a collection of Storybook-themed Sonic games, and in both of the games, Sonic travels into the world of a Storybook to stop a great evil that potentially threatens both his world and theirs, eating alternate versions of his friends and enemies in the process. The reason why we know that these games are definitely canon is because there's references to them in future media. For example, during the Metal Virus saga, we have a reference to Sonic and the Secret Rings. We've also seen references to the Storybook games in Sonic Generations as well.
I'm no stranger than rescuing genies in magic books or saving aliens in an interstellar amusement park. I'm more concerned about finding our friends.
But it's still not 100% confirmed. Also, we don't know exactly when Sonic and the Secret Rings takes place. It's not really a big deal because it doesn't really disrupt too much with the continuity. Like, you can definitely put it after 06, and then you're pretty flexible with some different places you could put it after. But at the end of the day, we still don't have definitive answers. The next major issue in the timeline is the lack of the Sonic Rivals games. So you look at a game like Sonic Advance 1 not being included on the timeline, and it's like, okay, you know, no major characters were introduced in this game. There's not really any major events that happen, so you can get away with not including it. However, a game like Sonic Rivals being missing off the timeline is extremely baffling and also doesn't make sense because Sonic Rivals is important to the Sonic timeline. Sonic Rivals is not just a mere PSP racing spin-off game. It's actually the official canon introduction to Silver back into the timeline. Because Sonic 06 was wiped out, the first official meeting between Sonic and Silver is actually Sonic Rivals. Next issue with the timeline, when does Sonic Prime take place? When it comes to the Sonic timeline, Sonic Prime is certainly an interesting case because it was revealed during the first season that the show is actually canon to the game. There was a lot of things that people consider to be contradictions in the Sonic Prime series, so people were wondering exactly how it's canon to the games and when exactly does it take place. We were allegedly promised to get answers to that by the end of Season 3. Season 3 ended without an answer to when it takes place in the timeline, as well as something that some people kind of felt was like a cliffhanger. Ian Flynn came out and responded to the angry Sonic fans after the season ended, and he said, "I did not say that Sonic Prime happens after Advance 3. He said sometimes after. That covers Colors, that covers Unleashed, that covers almost 20 years of games. It's intentionally vague. Advance 3 was referenced in the show, hence the mention. While we're at it, I didn't choose to make Prime canon, nor did I write, direct, run, or edit the show. I was just a consultant. I do not have all the answers. I am not the guy." He also came out and said that it doesn't matter when Sonic Prime takes place because Sonic Prime, like Sonic 06, wipes itself out. Regardless, it's notably absent from the new official Sonic timeline, and yes, it does wipe itself out, so does it really matter? Well, you did say it's canon, so it has to take place somewhere in the timeline, and we don't have an answer to that. Here's the next issue with the timeline. Where are the Sonic IDW comics? So the Sonic IDW comics are notably absent from the timeline, and for those of you who have not been keeping up, yes, it's been confirmed that Sonic IDW is in fact canon. It's also been confirmed that if you read IDW, the events of the comics takes place after Sonic Forces, so we know that definitively, but they don't actually include it on the timeline, which is something that I find interesting. I mean, it's kind of weird that we're retroactively telling stories within IDW, while simultaneously we moved on to the future with Sonic Frontiers. So you would assume that these comics take place before Sonic Frontiers, but after Sonic Forces, so just slap it right in the middle. I don't know why they didn't include it. Maybe there's some more retroactive stories to be told when you consider the fact that Shadow Generations, the most recent mainline or spin-off release, whatever you want to call it, is actually a retroactively told story. I wouldn't really be asking this question, but when you consider other multimedia that isn't featured in the game, such as the Knuckles prologue is featured on the timeline, you have to ask yourself, where's IDW? Where's Prime? There's no answer yet, and until we have an answer, we can only ask questions. Here's the next issue with the timeline. Where is Sonic Dream Team? Sonic Dream Team, unironically one of of the best 3D Sonic games ever made that nobody talks about. And that's because it's locked behind an Apple Arcade subscription service.
Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this just strictly mobile forever?
Are there any? The current plan is to be on mobile and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
What I find interesting about Sonic Dream Team not being included in the timeline is the fact that it's already been commented on by Ian Flynn.
Here's a question from Andrew D. Sonic Dream Team spoilers. I noticed something that I wanted to ask about. Sage was not around to save Eggman in the intro to Sonic Dream Team. Does that mean this game takes place before Sonic Frontiers, or was Sage simply not around?
Orbot and Cubot were also not there to help Eggman, so does this mean it's before Sonic Unleashed? Metal Sonic was not there to help him out, so does this mean it was before Sonic CD? Not every character is going to show up in every single game. Dream Team is post-Frontiers.
Considering nothing crazy happens in the story and we do get a new character, I figured they would just slap it sometime right after Frontiers. But again, maybe there's some more retroactive stories planned. As with all things in this timeline, I'm pretty much okay with everything, but we still have to ask the questions about the things that aren't here. Because yes, some of the obvious things that don't matter as much are missing, and it's confirmed that this timeline is a work in progress, but all it takes is for them to slap it somewhere where you don't like for all hell to break loose. So we're still going to ask the questions until we know for sure.